Oh, hello. Just a few notes about Black parenting from the perspective of a seasoned teacher who's taught everything from kindergarten to university and who's read most everything Bell Hooks has ever written, especially about love, culture, and teaching. There are lots of young people in my life, obviously students, and there are lots of young people in my family, many of whom are parents, and I don't always have their ear because they certainly think that they don't want to be preached to by older people. But here's the thing as Black people, and I specifically want to talk about parenting from the perspective of oppressed people, that so often we have learned ways to toughen up our kids that are no longer suitable for the modern world. I know so many Black children who are taught to be tough. For example, I saw one holiday. I saw a toddler playing with a kid's this person's relatives' kids Barbie dolls. This was a boy, and he was playing with the girls, his older girl cousins' dolls, and the mother came over and threw a fit and screamed and said, "I don't want him to be no punk," and said this, effectively to me, and so that was already, in effect, quite insensitive, and I don't take it personally because I can see that that person is in a lot of pain. And like every other parent, they want to protect their children. But we get so busy in parenting that we end up screaming, "Stop, no." And we don't realize that we're removing the opportunity to teach our children impulse control. And so I've seen children like who grow up in these environments self-harm. I know a child who scratches himself, 5 years old, and probably the parents can't figure out why. And so you think about, well, what does this look like in the classroom when you translate this behavior to the classroom? And now, of course, especially when you add gender and race, this kid is literally going to be labeled because they don't know how to control any of their impulses. And anytime there's a problem, they don't know how to redirect their own energy. They just know how to scream and holler, just like their mama did to them. And in Buddhism, we call this, the lower four states: anger, hell, hunger, animality. Sorry, that was the wrong order. But you see this, and you see kids going through this, and you see teachers who don't have the language to help their students through this, but the system just says, label them and exclude them. And we know far too many Black children who this so easily happens to, particularly when they don't have teachers who are willing or patient or even emotionally aware enough of their own power as educators. And so the worst thing that I think that one can say as a parent is, "Can't nobody tell me how to raise my kids." And I've heard this said in my own family. And so I recently sat down with one of the young men in my family who at some point in his life, he might be a parent. And I asked him about this, and we just spoke critically. And I wasn't preaching, but I just talked him through, okay, so our ancestors were slaves, and everything about family was robbed of us. And so we've been recreating it from day one in this culture, which means that the whippings, I'm gonna whip my and my in my family, my grandparents were cotton pickers. My grandfather was an actual sharecropper, and so the whippings that they told me about that they got, or the beatings, let me just say that the beatings that my mother's generation talks about from them. My grandfather had a leather belt that was a leather strap, the kind of strap that you would expect on a farm to be dealing with animals, to hold them, not to whip them. But this is what I know so many people in that generation grew up with. And so you think, well, how are you going to improve upon that? And if can't nobody tell you how to raise your kids, how in the heck did you become the expert? And I asked my little cousin, why do you think when you go into a bookstore, there is an entire section on parenting? Other people want to learn about parenting, other people want to improve upon it. And this is my final message. As Black people, we have the absolute responsibility to be people who are improving upon parenting, precisely because we know that was what was robbed of us. So my assumption is you got to keep growing as a parent. As a Black parent, you have to constantly be growing. You have to constantly be learning. My mother, of course, raised me in a Buddhist environment, and so she was training me to speak about my feelings, training me to respect difference, training me to learn from each and every person in in the environment, be it a janitor or be it a politician or professor. That person had something to teach me, and she had something to learn from them, be it do that or don't do that. And so I cringe when I hear particularly young black parents say, can't nobody tell me how to raise my kids. And there's this joke that, okay, but you're going to want us to babysit for you or contribute to you. And we actually do, in real terms, contribute to your lifestyle, to helping you live. And yet you don't want to hear our advice. I love that, you want our rhythm, but you don't want our blues. And that is what it comes down to, is that we have to have a council of parenting. I mean, Jesus, when even Hillary Clinton is saying it takes a village to raise a child, and then you have a young, single, poorly educated individual say something like, can't nobody tell me how to raise my kids, then all you're doing is saying that Ayana Van Zandt is going to have as many seasons as she wants, because there's going to be plenty of people whose lives need fixing. Plenty of jails, they're going to be filled up with black boys, especially. Because if we have even black mothers saying, I don't want my son to be a punk, well, say what you want to, but punks know how to talk about their feelings. And if you're not teaching young people how to talk about their feelings, you're teaching them how to deal with their feelings like this. And when you grow up like that, I think it's a definition of hopeless. As my aunt says, we don't give up hope on people. No one is irreparably damaged, but definitely many folk are damaged.